So earlier this year, I started to feel like I was in a rut. I started scrolling social media for hours, and it never made me feel good. Like I would see people posting baby announcements, and my husband and I have been trying to have a baby for a few years now. People in my industry were just having so much success, while I felt like I'm not even sure if this is what I want to do anymore. I just felt like I was standing still while everybody was just moving past me. Okay, just kidding. I wasn't that dramatic. I actually pretended that I didn't care. Good for them. I don't even care. Like, whatever. When really, deep down, I was feeling jealous and angry with myself. And not only are those emotions pretty just uncomfortable to be feeling in the first place, but on top of that, I started feeling like I was a bad person for having those thoughts. And it was just I just felt like life was passing me by. And then one day I was talking to a good friend, and he said that he wasn't ready to meet the love of his life. Like he wasn't sure like he could really give his best in a relationship yet. It got to me. Because can you imagine the love of your life coming along, or the one that you've been waiting for, and just being like, not sure I'm ready. You're gonna have to wait. Maybe just take a hike for a while till I'm ready. Sometimes it's easier to see things in others before you see it in yourself. I had been waiting for something to happen, waiting to be sure before I walked away from poker, and even waiting to be ready to do fertility treatment. I realize that we live in this day and time where beginnings, pivots, failures, they all occur publicly because we post the engagements, the new jobs, we all post it on social media. And so if anything goes wrong, or we have to struggle, or we kind of suck at something first, or we fail, or we get broken up with, we feel the need to defend ourselves or to explain because everybody knows what's happening with us all the time. And so often this can make us feel like we need to be sure. So I know a lot of us struggle with this waiting game, so to speak. Stoic philosopher Seneca perfectly sums up this idea in his essay on the shortness of life. He said, "Putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes and denies us the present by promising the future. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours. The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately." So this quote and this idea of waiting to be sure actually reminded me of poker. So for the last 15 years, my husband and I have been poker players. And the game has so many parallels to life because they are both games of skill, meaning that although there's luck involved, those who make the best, smartest decisions will win in the long term. All right, so in poker, you and your opponents are dealt 2 cards face down, and you're trying to make the best hand given what you have, and including cards that are in the board that everybody uses. And along the way, you bet money, or you can fold your hand. And you're trying to make these decisions based on what we call imperfect information, meaning that you have lots of information to take in, such as what your opponent is doing, how much they're betting, and what you have, but you never know your opponent's cards. You have to decide, should I put more money in? Is he bluffing? Should I bluff his ass? And the one thing that you get used to as a poker player is because you're making decisions based on imperfect information, it's inevitable that you will be wrong. It's just math. You're going to be wrong sometimes. And not only that, but even if you make the right decisions, depending on what cards are to come, you might still lose anyway. And I think of those next cards to come as the future. We can't predict the future, but it's helpful to think of life as also this game where Often the decisions that we make before we jump into a new relationship and love someone, or before we start our own YouTube channel, we can't know if it is 100% the right decision. We also can't know for sure if it will be successful. Of course, we can make informed decisions, put the odds in our favor, do everything we can for that to happen. Because at some point we need to recognize that we will never be certain and we need to make a decision. Because the other thing that waiting to be sure does is play an insidious trick. It tricks not only ourselves, but also the people around us into feeling like we're actually doing something when we're not. So it's like we're standing at the edge of the water and we're telling ourselves and everybody else, like, I'm about to jump in, I'm close. We're dipping our toes in and out. At any moment, we could really jump. And since we're right there, right at the edge, no one pushes us. No one says, write that book, paint that painting, start that business, go for it already. They don't say it because we've already told them, I'm just about ready. It's just as long as we're standing at the edge of the water without jumping in and without stepping back, it means we haven't gone for it and we haven't quit. We don't have to fail. Maybe never giving ourselves the chance to fail is really the real failure. If you've been feeling like life is passing you by, it is just like that wise part of you that knows what's up, telling you that you need to do something, and you probably already know what it is. One of the things I took action on was we started the process of IVF.
End of the world. We're still trying to make a baby.
This was something that we've been thinking about for years, actually. I think one of the reasons that I just waiting or on the fences was I was actually just afraid to fail, because IVF is the big guns, like the big guns for reproductive services, the most expensive, it's the most time consuming, it's the most difficult on your body. It's everything that science has to offer. In some ways, I was afraid that if we did this last effort and it didn't work, then I would fail as like a woman, as a wife, and as long as I wasn't making that decision, I didn't have to fail. And by the way, it's important for me to be clear. I don't actually think that if I am unable to have a biological child, that it is a failure in any way. Those were just my fear thoughts, the thoughts running under the surface that had me paralyzed. So we started that process, and what surprised me was how quickly, just even getting started, my feelings of frustration and even jealousy just dissipated because I was taking action. I thought it maybe would be the opposite because I was afraid to do it, but then of course coronavirus happened, so we are kind of stuck in the middle of that process. We have a couple of little baby embryos on ice, which they're frozen and waiting to be transferred. So we will do that in the next year, which is really exciting. And by the way, this is not to say be reckless. When I talk about taking action or risks, it's not just like, fuck it, let's do it. Let's just go for it. Bet it all on red. No. In poker and in life, you want to make calculated risks. One of the things that helps me do that is to weigh risk versus reward. And then you ask yourself these two questions. Have I not started or taken action because I really need something? That could be you need more information, or you really do need to wait until a specific time, or maybe you need specific gear. If that is the case, you create a plan to obtain whatever that is and have a date to start. That way it's not ambiguous, that way you can't just keep putting it off, it's rock solid. And then the other question is, or have I not started because I'm afraid? Are you afraid of looking stupid, of failing, of getting your heart broken? Now you have to be careful because the ego is really tricky and it really wants to keep you comfortable. So it might try to tell you, no, I really do need something before I start. So this is where you gotta be honest with yourself. Do you really need that thing, or are you just afraid? And what's great about actually moving and taking action is that, first of all, life won't be passing you by anymore. You'll be having life by the balls because you are taking what is in your control and not trying to control what's in fortune's control, right? So not only that though, even if you fail, even if you make mistakes, you will build resiliency. And the only way that anyone builds resiliency is when they have to face adversity. And then I always loved this speech by Oprah where she talks about what is the next right move, and that there are no failures. It's just these clues in life that push you in different directions. So if that's you, you're here with me. We're doing it together. So thank you so much for watching, and subscribe to follow along. Appreciate you.